Welcome to Going Deeper into Dev Marketing by Developer Market Pair, a show where we go beyond surface level, advise, and focus on actionable insights that dev tool founders and marketers can use to grow today. We'll do long interviews with top dev tool marketers, solo deep dives with yours truly, sprinkled with real life examples and teardowns. This will be fun. Oh, and yes, this was AI generated, but the rest of the show is very personal. Now, on to the show.
Hey, so I've been having this discussion lately a lot around attribution, how to do attribution, what can be done, how to approach different channels and attribute. And I think, like that, nothing I'm going to say is going to be, novel or anything. I don't expect, but I do have some thoughts that seem to be different than other people on attribution. For context, I was a data scientist before, before going into marketing, right? And stuff around data and analytics and, modeling different phenomena is definitely near and dear to my heart. And okay, but yeah, so attribution. First off, why do you do attribution? I think this is the core, problem of many things that are happening is, why do you do it? And generally, there are two reasons that I see. One reason is you do it to, to show to your higher ups. It has to show up in some reports. You wanna prove why. You want to prove ROI. You want to prove that certain programs even make sense. That marketing even makes sense. Like that. There's a flavor of this. That's one. So like reporting. The second one is decision making, right? You want to figure out whether you should be spending, 2x, 5x, 10x on a channel. Should you be doing that channel at all or cut it? Should you be doing that activity or not? Does it drive impact? And I think both have place, but generally the reporting part is a prelude to the decision-making part. And sometimes it's not. And when it's not, it becomes a bit toxic, where you basically are, doing attribution just for the sake of, somebody pushing you for it. But if it's not, then, they will be making a decision as to which programs maybe should be cut, somebody up. Or you could be making that decision, right? Or you could be thinking which programs to do, what to do, etc. And so I think the activity of doing tracking or doing attribution, should always be connected to that decision making. That's why you do it, right? So what does it mean? If looking at your attribution doesn't change anything in the decisions you're making, then the attribution you're doing is worthless. That's basically what I think. The second thing is that that attribution can only be directional. I don't believe in 100%, attribution or attributing everything, being able to figure out exactly how much a single post is driving, how much, value a single post is driving, etc. I think there is, a single ad even, outside of very, very few scenarios where it can do that. It's just a futile effort. And what I think you should be doing is, is figuring out how to optimize activities within channels, in like ads or like content, like stuff around engagement, etc. And then basically attributing the impact to the entire program of, let's say, doing LinkedIn ads or podcasts or something like that. But that's for a separate discussion. What I want to talk about now is how do you connect the activities that are happening in the channel with that impact, because this is what you want. And to do that, you only need direction, right? Ideally, you want to rank direction. What I mean is that ideally you want to have both the connection between the program that you're running, let's say those ads, or I don't know, commenting on Reddit posts or whatever the program is, and the impact that it drives. You want to have a connect It doesn't need to be one-to-one, and it will never be one-to-one, but it still can give you, connection and impact. And then the second thing you'd want is to be able to stack rank things and sort of like figure out what is working way better, or how strong that impact is. That's incrementality. And I think this is at the crux of it, where people conflate the two, attribution and incrementality. Attribution is basically when, I want to make sure that I can attribute certain impact to, to certain activity, that this activity influenced that impact. But it's not the same as incrementality. With incrementality, you want to know how much incremental growth a certain activity or a program or something drove. And that's where it gets hard, because to actually do incrementality, you need to do a bit more sophisticated thing than, than say somebody came from Google because they did, click on a Google ad, right? That they did, so it did touch people, right? So that there is some attribution that should be done, but it's not, the impact of it is not, it's not obvious. And obviously there are methods of like doing multi-touch attribution and making sure that you assign that impact to different things, but those they don't work from my perspective. Like that, it doesn't, when you think of a non-linear paths and people coming, and then the effects of combined effects between different touch points and stuff like that, it just doesn't work. And more importantly, it's a lot of work to try and do that, right? That may or may not, and most likely will not, drive the decisions that you're going to be making after. And especially when you're early stage, you shouldn't be doing that, right? Because at the early stage, what you want to see is that you do a certain program or a certain activity, and the impact of it is obvious, right? Now, coming to those activities, I'm going to come back to this sort of like early stage and the the impact. Coming back to the activities, right? And which activities you do, which drive ROI, etc. There is this famous quote saying that that 50% of marketing is wasted, or marketing spend is wasted. You just don't know which one. And I really liked the comment coming from Ren Fishkin on it, where I'm just gonna read it, for those who don't see it now. It's weird to say, but I'm back on the it's time to waste half your marketing budget on things you can prove train. Because if you do that, that half does work will be so much higher ROI than the ludicrously expensive big tech and ad channels that your overall marketing results will prove, right? And that's a great point, because you shouldn't be choosing channels only because you can, it's easier for you to prove value in those channels. Why? Because those channels will help you prove value in a way that is favorable to them. I'll give you an extreme example, and you can connect it to, to certain things that you probably, are running. So there was this thing where this sort of, I don't know if it's a myth or a urban legend or what it is, but basically kids got flyers to hand out, and whoever and then the flyers had names on them, and then people, when they came to the store, they would show flyers and get some sort of a discount. So and the kid that gave the flyer, whose name was on it, would basically get a cut of the profit, right? And so people, when those kids, they weren't around the city, started giving out flyers, and in most the city center, running around trying to do stuff, give those flyers, talk about the brand, give, and et cetera, et cetera. And then there was this one kid that basically what they did is they came to the store, stood right outside of the door, and they would hand out flyers to people entering the store. Or I think maybe it was like sticking flyers on them, whatever it was. And yeah, like they would attribute, they would get a cut because they managed to touch a certain activity of people coming into the store. So, so they get a cut. Now, the problem with that is that there's zero impact of that activity for the store, right? It is attributed touch point, but it's not incremental in any way. People were entering the store anyway, so why should that person get any attribution or any share of the profit if they had zero impact, right? And certain channels can do flavors of that for you, right? So so I think that's the key. Like the kid that was doing screaming and shouting at the city center or at a city square or something, they should get more. They had more impact on it, but they didn't really like they probably didn't get as much attribution as the guy who was sitting at the door and was getting basically was able to put a flyer to 100% of the traffic going through the door. And so to us in marketing, what it means is like we want to do activities that have impact, but the attribution should be helping us in making decisions and not the other way around, where we pick activities and programs based on if we can prove them, right? Because we want impact, especially early on. You want impact. You want more. You want to drive the meaningful business metrics. I mean, at any point, but early, this is, like this is all there is. Right. So so I think that's the key, where we want those things to help us make decisions. Now, how do we do it? Like what? So do I say that? Do I mean that there are no methods or you shouldn't be doing any attribution? No, absolutely not. And there are, I want to talk about those methods, or like, how I like to think about it. But the core of it is, I'm not looking for 100% attribution. I'm not looking for proving the value of every activity. What I'm looking at is I want to get directional insights, right? Directional, qualitative and quantitative insights that drive my decisions when it comes to budget allocation. To which program should I do? Should I do more of them? Should I do less of them? What should I do? That's what I want to do, right? I want to get more ultimately, more devs using the product, more organizations paying for it. That's what I want. I don't care as much about that being attributed. If I bring 10x more activated developers, how bad is it that I don't exactly know which, I don't know, local meetups did it come from, or like it came from from some guerrilla marketing with stunts. I mean, you want to know that that there is that this the program drove it, but I like the optimization part and tweaks to like which exactly maybe the billboard or which person giving out like this is less important, especially early on. So what do we do? And there are two ways to answer this. I like thinking about. I like talking about and using. So version 1 is self-reported attribution. Look, I know there are trouble with it. So basically, for those who don't know, self-reported attribution, how it works is you have a question: how did you find out about us in your registration form? And you make it required, and then people put in how did they find out about you, and they and then well, so there are some troubles with it, like with every method, because basically this returns you a most memorable channel, right? Often, it could be the first, could be the last, could be most memorable. I mean, it is the most memorable as far as I understand. For some people, they put in something random. A lot of it comes out junk because people, if you make it open forum, people put A, B, C, C, D. And yeah, so those are downsides. The upsides of it, especially if you do it with open forum, is that you get, some people will give you more about their user journey. They say that, hey, maybe, I met you at your booth. And then, I was following you on Twitter, and then, I saw an ad on YouTube, and I, clicked. It happens very rarely, but it does happen sometimes, those sort of like, journeys. I mean, and if you just sort the answers from the longest to the shortest, you get that. But that is, self-report attribution is something that I find very useful, now tweaks to it, how I like to, do it. So we can do like selections of options, and then open form or open text. I like open text. I actually like to couple open text with with a simple model, or either rule-based manual, or now I do use prompts to do it. That basically classify those different channels, right? So people put in things with typos or not, and then ChatGPT is just gonna group them in those buckets, and then you get the buckets, and then you get those channels that you can plot over time, etc., etc. I like to make it required, so that, yes, a big chunk of people, some, it could be as high as 30, 40, 50% of people will put in A, B, C, D if you make it open field, but that's fine, because I'm not looking for perfect attribution. What I'm looking is for directional, impact of different things. That's what I'm looking for, right? So if I was looking for perfect attribution, obviously that doesn't work. Now, so that, if you do really want to put selected options, make sure to randomize them. I mean, there are some additional problems with options. You need to tweak those options over time. You don't learn about any new channels. So, for example, with open field, you get stuff like, a random influencer, that you never heard of, starts coming, popping up in there, and so you learn about a channel that people find you through. That you wouldn't have otherwise put as an option. So I really like to have it open field plus classification on top of it. I see very little downside to it. But if you do put selected options, make sure to have it, to randomize, because otherwise you're gonna have people, just picking the top one. And by the way, like if you care about, that A, B, C, D, input is garbage when people are over selecting the first option. That's also, pretty garbage inside. It just looks better. So yeah, self-reported. The second option, which is, makes sense, especially if you run more, bigger things, is doing marketing mix modeling. But there's a flavor, sort of like a extreme bare bones flavor of marketing mix modeling that I want to talk about first. So when you're early, and I had this discussion with Itamar Benny a year on another episode, and I love this approach so much. So you're early, right? And so we have very little traction, or there's some traction. We want to grow that traction. What you're looking for is big incremental improvements. That's what you want. So maybe you're driving, I don't know, 10, 20, 50 signups, and you want to drive not 55, you want to drive 100, you want to drive 500, right? You're looking for big, for finding channels that actually work and drive people, right? You're not at the scale where increasing it by 10% makes any difference. So you should be looking for big incremental improvements. And so actually early on, you have this privilege of when something is working, you're going to see that way. It's going to be way easier to see it, right? Especially when you don't run many programs. It's going to be way easier to see it. So you run something, you see, a 10x or 5x improvement, 3x, whatever it is, but like a big improvement in the metrics you care about, being, that being the demo requests, or, free signups or something like that, activated signups. And a channel or program is working, right? So you run something and you see it working, even without any self-attribution, reported attribution, without any software reported attribution, like nothing needs to be there, right? Because you're running something, you see a huge, incremental improvement of an activity, you do more of it. You know that this is probably driving those results. And then let's say you see that improvement, you decided to spend, I don't know, 5,000 on ads, let's say, right? You're running those LinkedIn ads, as e-commerce is running some successful campaigns there. You're running those ads, and you see the big improvement, right? And then you kind of want to think how to, so answer this question of like, how should I scale it 2x, 5, 3x, right? Scale it by 10%. And again, the same rule applies. It's way easier to see impact when you make a bigger change or you do something way different, right? So in this case, if you spend 2x or 3x, you should be seeing a big impact in signups. Versus if you try to scale those things by 5% or 10%, then you wouldn't see that impact, or it would be so small that maybe it would be just hard to know that this is that and not some random other thing that happened, right? So making bigger changes that drive bigger impact ultimately just makes it super easy, especially early, to attribute those things, to just know what has incremental impact. And this method of basically I'm doing something and I see that impact without directly putting links anywhere, directly doing anything for tracking that sort of activity, that alone gives you early on will give you a lot of signals, right? The impact of that on your activities is pretty big too, because like then you shouldn't be doing 20 different things at the same time. You should be doing one thing and seeing the results, one thing seeing the results, one thing seeing the results, maybe two or something like that, but like not many, right? If you run many, then you don't know what happened, especially if there are many things sort of spread out with small investment of time and money, right? So but what happens later when you have many channels that are working, right? And you want to try and scale some things, you want to try and do, like figure out how to scale spend in different places, etc. And that's where that concept of marketing mix modeling comes in. And I think it's a great concept. And there are products right now that implement it. So the concept is basically this: you look at impressions in different channels, or different ads, different ad campaigns, however you want to bucket it. You look at impressions, and you look at important metrics that happen within a time frame that you expect that impression to impact, and you correlate them, or you run models, simple modeling or more complex modeling that basically gives you the baseline, what would happen if no channels were there, what would happen, and then impact of each channel on that. What was the what did a particular channel drive over the baseline. So the time frame could, making it specific, let's say I'm running LinkedIn ads, Twitter ads, and there is a blog, say, right? And that you have your content program. You see the impressions in all of these. You see the you see impressions but you do impressions by week or by month, and then you figure out what sort of impact can it have within the time frame of that impression happening, right? Where do you think it's gonna touch it? Say we expect people to go to high intent pages on your site within a week, or just do something important like a demo request, especially if you're doing programs that you think can impact that within that time frame. You and you should early on, right? It shouldn't be very long. It should be, the impact should be quick. And you you overlay those things, right? You have the bi-week demo requests or activated signups. You have bi-week impressions on those different places, and then you run a simple model and see the impact of those things, right? And there are tools that implement it and make it, make things. There are tweaks to it that need to be done, etc. Yeah, the better you want those models to be, right? And they become more complex machine learning models, but that's the idea. You correlate impressions with the impact. And I think this is a really good approach. But just connecting this to early stages is basically, yeah, like in theory and in practice, actually, early on, you don't really need to do that. Like you can just look at your, what programs you're running. There shouldn't be that many early on, and you have the impact, the core metrics you care about, whether that be MQLs, opportunities, activated signups, what have you, downloads, and you look at activities, sort of like correlate which activities happen when versus those numbers, and here you go. Right. So influencer campaigns, where when they're running and when they get the most impressions, etc. Right. So that's how you get the you can correlate those things and triangulate. And you do that. Why? Because you want to make decisions. Should I spend more? Should I do more in this particular thing? Should I look for something that works? Because if nothing really gets you any results, then that's it. Right? You need to keep looking. You need to keep tweaking. I do think there's a lot of value in actually doing less, but more of it. Like focusing on those things. Doing one thing, really trying one thing, really trying. I think there's a lot of value in doing less. I know it's hard, but and then seeing those results that you care about in there. So summing up, attribution, I think. Oh, and by the way, you see that I'm not I think there are some cases where links also help, like UTM links. Especially running, if you're running many different ad campaigns, doing those things, sort of organizing it gives you additional layer of data for debugging within, so that you can optimize those different activities. So it helps, but I don't want to talk about it maybe here. But the most important, I think, the core to it is that you should be looking for incrementality, and you want to get insights that help you make decisions that drive incremental improvements. That's what you want to do. It doesn't give you much if you like just attributing, putting a dollar amount on every single interaction that people have. It's, to me, this is not the approach to do it. And it's something that like there was a moment, as far as I understand, where you could attribute everything in digital marketing early 2000s, and that's where sort of all this thinking comes from. But then like, why would people do billboards? Like, and we know they work, right? Like, they work. People are spending a lot because, like, you actually are doing marketing mix modeling on those billboards. If you if you want to go very technical, or that people are there and they will see it, and then you're looking for qualitative things coming up in your sales conversations, and then that they had impact. And so it's that idea of 100% attribution is just, I think, very flawed and very risky, because it pushes you towards activities that are not working, but you can attribute more of. And at the end of the day, you don't want to be that guy putting stickers on people entering the store with your activities, because then you're not driving any incremental improvements, and sooner or later people realize it. And so if all your marketing is putting that sticker at the end, then sorry, like, it's not going to be good. All right, cool. So I hope this helps, and talk to you soon. Thanks.
That's a wrap for this episode of Going Deeper into Dev Marketing by developer Mark Appare. If you like the show and would like to support, follow the show and drop us a review. It means a ton and helps other dev tool founders and marketers find us. For more dev marketing resources, check out markappare.dev, where you'll find tens of guides and hundreds of examples. For more visual version of this pod, go to our YouTube channel at dev_Mark Appare. See you next time.